ESPN delivered its most watched WNBA game ever. Atlanta Dream, Indiana Fever averaged 2.6 million views with a peak of 4 million viewers. It is up 178% versus last year's ESPN regular season average, and WNBA on ESPN networks, the most viewed WNBA games, you have the Atlanta Dream versus the Indiana Fever, the Chicago Sky versus the Fever, the Lynx versus the Fever, the Wings versus the Fever.
A few years ago, a WNBA arena could feel almost empty. The squeak of a single sneaker would echo off rows of unused plastic seats, and a courtside ticket often cost less than a hot dog at a high school football game. Fans could sit 5 feet from the bench, stretch their legs across 3 open chairs, and hear a coach's instructions without straining to listen. Today, tuning into a women's basketball broadcast looks nothing like that. Arenas are selling out, and thousands of fans are being turned away at the door. League executives have taken that surge in audience numbers to national television studios, framing it as a natural, long-awaited renaissance for the sport as a whole. The broadcast data tells a narrower story. The recent influx of new viewers is not spread evenly across the league's teams. It is concentrated almost entirely around one team. The ratings reports coming out of major sports networks this season are historic by any measure. In August, a Fever win over the Atlanta Dream averaged 2.58 million viewers on ESPN, the largest audience the WNBA has ever drawn on cable television, with the broadcast peaking at 4 million viewers during one quarter-hour stretch. That mark topped a previous cable high of 2.54 million, set by a Fever playoff game the year before. It was also the 8th Indiana broadcast this season to average at least 2.4 million viewers, more than double the combined total from the previous 25 seasons. Earlier in the summer, a Fever matchup with the New York Liberty drew 2.56 million viewers on CBS, a number the network described as up 33% from the comparable broadcast window the season before. A different Fever-Liberty game weeks later brought in 2.58 million on the same network, peaking above 3 million. NBC countered with its own record claim, reporting that a Fever Aces game in July delivered a total audience of 2.64 million across NBC and Peacock. 2 networks, in the span of 6 days, each declared it the most-watched WNBA broadcast of the season. Even the pre-game coverage has followed the trend. WNBA Countdown, the league's studio pre-game show, averaged 818,000 viewers this year, a 20% increase over the season before, suggesting fans are tuning in before tip-off specifically to see what one team is doing. Across all 19 national broadcasts on ESPN's platforms this season, the league is averaging 1.2 million viewers, another year-over-year increase. Look past the top-line numbers, and the picture network executives have been presenting starts to come apart. League officials announced at mid-season that the WNBA had already become the most-watched season in its history, citing 73 million unique viewers through the year's halfway point and a 16% increase in league-wide attendance, with 29 games drawing more than 1 million viewers apiece. On paper, those figures describe a sport rising as a whole. More granular tracking tells a more specific version of the same story. WNBA games across the major national networks are averaging 756,000 viewers this season, up 15% from a year ago. All 5 of the most-watched broadcasts of the season have featured Indiana, and network tallies show that 6 of the 10 largest WNBA television audiences since 2000 have come from Fever games played this year alone. Even in stretches where the Fever's biggest star has missed games, the team's broadcasts have still outperformed the rest of the league. A Fever game against Las Vegas during one such absence still drew 1.5 million viewers on ESPN, and a following game against the Los Angeles Sparks pulled a similar number on CBS. The audience, in other words, has increasingly followed the franchise itself, not one player alone, but it remains an audience built almost entirely around a single team's schedule. That imbalance shows up just as clearly in the smaller broadcast windows. A recent Fever late-night game peaked at 1.31 million viewers, the largest audience for a late-night WNBA broadcast on that network since it began airing league games. The Indiana game before it had drawn 1.085 million on the same channel, trailing only a May matchup between Golden State and Indiana as the network's best-performing window of the season. Both of those broadcasts, notably, still involve the Fever. When national networks have tried to build ratings momentum from games that do not feature Indiana, the results have not matched the enthusiasm of the coverage. Broadcasts featuring the rest of the league are performing close to where they have held for years, while the numbers tied to one team continue climbing into territory the sport has never reached. Placed against the league's own history, the scale of this shift becomes clearer. The WNBA opened in 1997 to genuine enthusiasm, averaging close to 10,000 fans a game and drawing finals audiences that peaked near 3 million viewers. That early interest faded over the following 2 decades. By 2019, average attendance had fallen to an all-time low of roughly 6,500 fans per game. The 2020 season played out with no fans in arenas at all, and 2021 saw only a few thousand fans per game under lingering capacity limits. Attendance did not return to pre-pandemic levels in any consistent way until 2024, when it jumped to nearly 10,000 per game virtually overnight. That jump coincided with one draft class entering the league. League-wide attendance climbed further the following year, and total attendance across the season broke the all-time record previously set back in 2002, even though the league was playing a similar number of games with fewer total teams than it fielded at its peak more than 2 decades earlier. The current boom, in other words, is not a continuation of a steady 30-year climb. It is a sharp break from a multi-decade pattern of stagnation and decline, arriving at almost the exact moment one team's roster changed. Arena attendance this season tells a similar version of the story. The WNBA's newest expansion franchise, the Portland Fire, opened its inaugural season with a sellout crowd of 19,335 fans, setting an all-time league record for an expansion team's debut. The Toronto Tempo, another first-year franchise, later broke the league's regular season attendance record outright, drawing 20,996 fans to a game at Montreal's Bell Centre. The league's All-Star Game in Chicago drew 19,783 fans to the United Center, a record for the event and, for the first time, a larger crowd than that year's NBA All-Star Game managed to draw. The Golden State Valkyries, in just their second season, announced that season tickets had sold out with more than 12,000 holders, after the franchise set the league's all-time record for both average and total attendance in its debut year. Underneath those individual milestones sits a more specific driver. Roughly half the league has moved home games against Indiana into larger arenas over the past 2 seasons, simply to accommodate the demand generated by one opponent's visit, a scheduling adjustment no other team in the league has required. The Fever's own attendance figures track that pattern closely. The team drew nearly 17,000 fans per game at home during its rookie draft class's debut season, more than any Fever team had drawn in team history to that point, and per-game numbers have continued to climb in the season since, as the team added more marquee opponents and postseason relevance to the schedule. The commercial numbers move in the same direction. Fanatics reported that Caitlin Clark's jersey ranks second in basketball jersey sales nationally, across both the WNBA and NBA, trailing only Stephen Curry and ahead of players like LeBron James and Luka Doncic. StubHub has reported that Fever ticket sales on the platform this year are roughly 90 times higher than they were before the team drafted her. League sponsorship revenue climbed 40% from 2024 to 2025 and is on pace to grow further this year, with new sponsors including AWS, Procter & Gamble, Mars, and Skechers joining the league's roster of partners. The league's national media rights, meanwhile, were valued at $2.2 billion over 11 years when the current package was signed in mid-2024. Additional agreements since then, including new deals with CBS, ION, and USA Network, have pushed the total value of those rights above $3.1 billion, roughly 6.5 times the annual value of the league's previous television contract. None of those figures are broken down team by team in public reporting, but the timing lines up with the broadcast and attendance data. The growth arrived alongside the arrival of one specific rookie class, and it has continued to track closely with one team's schedule since. Streaming numbers reinforce the same pattern in a market that is, in theory, less dependent on any single storyline. Amazon Prime Video's largest audience of the season came from a Fever game against the Atlanta Dream, which averaged 816,000 viewers, up 19% from an earlier matchup between the same 2 teams that had also aired on the platform. A Fever game against the Chicago Sky the week before had drawn 736,000 viewers on Prime Video, itself a season high at the time it aired. League-wide, Prime Video is averaging just over 500,000 viewers per game this season, but its audience skews younger than the linear broadcasts, outperforming traditional television networks by roughly a third among viewers between 18 and 34. That younger audience is precisely the demographic advertisers have paid the most to reach, and league data has shown similarly sharp year-over-year growth among viewers of color and younger fans more broadly during stretches of the schedule dominated by Indiana's games. The debate over how much credit belongs to one player as opposed to one rookie class or one era of talent remains genuinely unresolved inside the sport. Other rookies and young stars, including Angel Reese in Chicago and Paige Buchers in Dallas, have drawn their own headline moments and contributed to broadcasts that outperformed recent year averages. The league has used that broader talent pool to argue its growth is not dependent on a single name, and it has backed that argument with expansion. The WNBA has already added franchises in Golden State, Toronto, and Portland since 2025, with Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia set to join by the end of the decade, bringing the league to 18 teams. Expansion of that scale is typically a bet that demand will hold up broadly, not that it depends on one team's schedule. Still, when the same set of games keeps producing the outsized numbers and broadcasts without Indiana keep landing closer to historical norms, the on-paper case for a broad-based boom keeps running into a narrower set of facts on the ground. A meaningful share of the attention driving these numbers moves through social media before it ever reaches a television screen. After high-profile matchups, clip accounts and sports pages circulate short videos of hard fouls, on-court exchanges, missed shots, and physical play. Fans who have never watched a full quarter of basketball find themselves scrolling through clips of players trading words or hitting long-range shots. Comment sections fill with arguments over rivalries, playing styles, and personalities. That online activity tends to convert casual scrollers into broadcast viewers by game time, driven less by a general interest in the sport and more by a desire to see a specific storyline play out live, a dynamic that shows up disproportionately around whichever matchup on the schedule involves Indiana that week. That momentum is now approaching a structural test built directly into the calendar. The WNBA regular season will pause entirely from August 31 through September 16 to accommodate the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup in Berlin, a 17-day break during which the league's biggest national broadcasts go dark. Team USA's roster for that tournament includes several of the league's most recognizable players, Caitlin Clark and Aja Wilson among them, meaning the same athletes driving domestic ratings will spend the break competing overseas rather than appearing on American television at all. The pause overlaps directly with the start of professional and college football season, both of which will be competing for the same viewers the WNBA has spent the summer building. Notably, this is the last time the World Cup will fall during the WNBA season at all. FIBA has already announced that future editions of the tournament will move to a November and December window, starting in 2030, specifically to avoid this scheduling conflict going forward. Whether the audience built around one team's games this season stays engaged through a multi-week absence or drifts toward fall sports during the gap is a question this year's numbers cannot yet answer, and the league will not get another season with this exact calendar problem to test it against. That uncertainty sits alongside a broader disagreement inside the sport about what is actually driving the numbers. For months, some network figures, analysts, and league veterans have downplayed the role of a single draft class, framing the current growth as the delayed payoff of investments made over previous decades. Weekly television data has not supported that framing. Networks that had rarely prioritized women's basketball are setting all-time records simply by airing Indiana games on Friday and Saturday nights. Streaming platforms are seeing viewership spikes that align directly with the team's game schedule, and regional networks are reporting sharp increases in engagement whenever the team travels. That gap between public messaging and the underlying data has become harder to ignore with each passing week, and it has left some of the league's own broadcast partners in the odd position of publicly crediting a decade of investment while privately building their promotional calendars around one team's schedule. Taken together, television ratings, arena attendance, merchandise sales, and the league's own media rights valuations point to the same conclusion. The sellout crowds in 20,000-seat arenas, the competing record claims among television networks, and the surge in mainstream coverage are not the result of a slow, decades-long build spread evenly across the league. They are tied to a concentrated shift in attention around one team that has reshaped the sport's commercial footprint in the span of about 2 years, after nearly 2 decades in which attendance and ratings mostly moved in the other direction. As the league heads into a World Cup break it will never face again on this exact schedule, the central question is not whether one player changed the business of women's basketball. It is whether the league can turn that shift into something that outlasts the current moment once the games that produced it go quiet for 2.5 weeks and the schedule hands the spotlight to college and professional football instead.